It's good to see everybody. It is time for us to go ahead and get back into our journey through the Bible, studying through the Old Testament. And just to make sure that we are all on the same page, what part of history are we in right now? What would we call this? Yeah, Joshua. Okay, all right. We are in the First Kings. We're the book of First Kings. Very good. Lucy? All right, this is the divided kingdom. And so, yeah, as Joshua said, all the way up until you get to First Kings, what chapter? Where did we spend all our time last week? All right, once you get to 1 Kings chapter 12, all the way up to that point, it really is just the kingdom, right? We have all of our preliminary stuff. They go down into Egypt, come back, conquer the land. You have the time of the judges. Who are our first three kings? Okay, so you have Saul, and then David, and Solomon, right? So Saul, David, and then Solomon. And they kind of are the paragon of all that is good and righteous in the world, right? Yeah. Hold on one second. The microphone is making its way to you.
He's wondering if you have a darker pen.
No, this is as dark as it gets. Yeah. So these right here, just what I'm putting up here right now, this is stuff that you've seen about 40 times or so, so hopefully that's okay. The stuff that I write later will be bigger. But what I normally use is as dark as it gets, is as big as I've got. So Saul, David, Solomon. Is Solomon the paragon of all that is good and righteous in the world? Not exactly. In fact, what chapter can you go back to in the law and find out what the laws for the king were? Yeah, Deuteronomy chapter 17. And in that, there were three things that it said the king was not supposed to do. What were those things? Wives, wealth, and horses. Do not accumulate a bunch of wealth for yourself. Do not obtain a bunch of horses, specifically from where, or especially from Egypt. And do not accumulate a bunch of wives for yourself, or else what might happen? What might those wives do? All right, turn your heart away from the Lord your God. So Solomon comes on the scene, and he does three things. What are those three things that he accumulates? Wealth, wives, and horses, right? The three things. And keep in mind, that's not an accident. The person who is writing 1 Kings for us is doing so it's like he has a copy of Deuteronomy 17 open. All right? This is very much put here so you can see he is failing in the exact things that he's told not to fail. So he accumulates a great amount of wealth for whom? For himself. It doesn't disperse throughout the people. It goes into his second house, right? I mean, his palace in Lebanon is what gets all of this wealth. The horses, where does he get them from? Egypt and Q, right? Or what we would call Ethiopia. The horses and chariots that he accumulates. And then finally, the wives. Mm-hmm. Yep. That's right. Joshua said that with his wives, they caused him to worship other gods. And his heart was not wholly dedicated to the Lord his God. So that's when Ahijah is sent and lets him know that after him, the kingdom was going to be split. And after him, you have then the split that takes place between now these two nations. And typically with our timeline at this point, this will be, we'll split these apart. You go up for the northern nation. What's the northern nation called? All right, Israel. What else is it called? All right, it's also going to be known as Samaria, land of Samaria. Also, well, Israel we have, in Samaria. What was the predominant tribe? Ephraim, right? So it's going to be known by all of those things. When you see those names given, the land of Samaria, the land of Ephraim, or Israel, it's talking about this northern nation. And then what's the southern one called? All right, Judah. So these are now the two separate branches of Israelite history that is going to flow through 1st and 2nd Kings from this point out. We are in the middle of the first divided kingdom narrative. Last week we talked about the first king of Judah, and who was that? All right, so Rehoboam is the first king in the southern nation of Judah. As he's going to be crowned, what did the people ask? Yeah. Very good, Joshua. Yep. Yeah, they came to him and said, hey, your father was really harsh. He had a lot of building projects, a lot of things that he did and made it hard on the people. And they came to Rehoboam. They said, look, just ease up a little bit and we will serve you. And Rehoboam told them, go away for how many days? 3 days, come back, I'll give you an answer. First people that he talked to were... Okay, all right. So the old men, the counselors of what king? Solomon. And you think Solomon was considered to be quite the wise individual. He's probably surrounded himself with wise people. So he goes and talks to the counselors, and what do they say? Lighten up. Listen to them. Do what they ask, and they will serve you. Who else did he talk to? All right, his friends, right? Logan just said his friends. He goes to his peers, the ones that, he's probably grown up with. And what did they advise him? Yeah. You need, Isaac said, don't lighten up. He said, from the very beginning, you need to show them who's boss. If you give them even an inch, what's going to happen? Yeah, they will continue to test you. Give them an inch, they'll take a mile. I think someone over here, maybe Jonathan said that. It was Sean? Okay, someone over here. Yeah, so give them an inch, they'll take a mile. You can't let them have anything at all. Show them who's boss. So they come back, and what does he tell them? Joshua, what did you say earlier? Yeah, you want to know how bad it's going to be? My father punished you, disciplined you with whips. I'm going to use scorpions. Yes, nailed it. That is right, Joshua. Scorpions are worse than whips. That's definitely the picture there. Yeah, so what did the people then say? Okay. The people of Israel, they said, to your tents, O Israel. What part do we have with the family of David? At this point, they say, you know what? Y'all can have your king. Okay, by now you guys know I don't draw to scale, right? So some of y'all are like, yeah, that's really messed up. Where's Jerusalem on this map? Nailed it. Yes, that's exactly right. We'll say it's around right there or so is where you're going to find Jerusalem. All right. That really looks bad. My Dead Sea is deader than normal. Hold on. That didn't help it much. Whatever. You guys know what it is. It kind of looks like a kidney bean almost now. All right. Anyway, you guys are used to my drawings by now. Okay. So Jerusalem is around in here. This is where they set up. Now we're drawing a line just north of Jerusalem. And who is going to be the king up in the north? All right. Now we've got Jeroboam. All right, so we've got Rehoboam. Maybe I should have flipped these. It would have made a little more sense. Let me just do that real quick. We got Jeroboam in the north and Rehoboam in the south. And why doesn't Rehoboam immediately just mount an army and go up and get them back? All right. Doesn't he put an army together? Doesn't he decide that he's going to go and get them back? And then God says, don't. And to his credit, Rehoboam listens. And he lets them be. All right. Everybody remember all of this from last week? This is about the part where we put a break on things. Everybody good to go? Yeah, Kelly?
Is there any significance to their names? Because, like, it seems weird they both named Oam and they're brothers.
What was the last thing you said?
Are they brothers? Or are they
No.
just randomly? They're just randomly called.
Yeah.
Oboam.
Yes.
So what? So.
I have no idea.
Okay.
I mean, I could spend some time if you remind me looking at that this week. If I forget. But I don't know what those names mean. And I'm not even going to try to hazard a guess at this moment. So I'll just leave it at that. Sometimes you just got to say, I don't know. So yeah, you have Jeroboam in the north, Rehoboam down in the south. And Rehoboam just kind of takes a backseat in the narrative because now we're going to focus on Jeroboam. Where did we first meet Jeroboam? Yep. All right, very good, Joshua. Yeah, when, remember, Ahijah the prophet came out, and he took a garment and ripped it into 12 pieces and gave 10 of them to Jeroboam. And in the midst of that, if you go back to chapter 11, and I think it's important that we see this, and I'm trying to figure out or find exactly where that is. So I'm going to start in verse 37, chapter 11, and verse 37. So God through Ahijah is saying, I will take you, and you shall reign over all that your soul desires. You shall be the king over Israel. And if you listen to all that I command you, and walk in my ways, and do what is right in my eyes, by keeping my statutes and my commandments, as David my servant did, I will be with you, and what? What does he say he'll do? I will build you a house, just like I built for whom? For David. In other words, what is being promised right here? A very big promise, yes. Huge. Yeah, this is the Davidic covenant all over again. That's what Isaac just said. And if you remember, we have our key passages. I'm going to put them over here. What's the first key passage? Genesis 3, which is the what? The fall. What's the second one? Genesis 12. What is that? All right, the promises to Abraham. What's the third one? All right, Exodus 24. That is the Mosaic, the covenant with Israel. And then the fourth is what? Did someone say it? 2 Samuel 7? Okay, and what is that? All right, now we have the promises to David, or the Davidic covenant, in which he says, I appreciate that you want to build my house. I'm going to build your house and give you a dynasty that'll last forever. And I think we rightfully make a huge deal out of that. That is a big moment. There's a reason that this is one of what I consider to be, and not just me, I didn't come up with these. These have been around as the 5 key passages. I've tweaked them maybe just a little bit, but I got them from someone else, who I'm sure got them from someone else, who I'm sure got them from someone else, right? There's a reason that we make such a big deal out of 2 Samuel chapter 7. That is huge, that God says, I will give you this dynasty that will never end. And then he turns around and he says the same exact thing to Jeroboam. I find that fascinating. He gives the exact same promise. He says, just like I did for David, I'm going to do this for you. What's the difference between 2 Samuel 7 and 1 Kings chapter 11? Well, hold on, Joshua. I'm going to throw this one out. What's the difference? I want to hear from an adult here. You guys are letting the kids answer all the questions tonight. I'm putting you all on the spot here. What's the difference between 1 Samuel 7, 2 Samuel 7, 1 Kings chapter 11, and these promises? No kids. Sorry. We got to hear from the adults here. You guys are training them not to answer questions anymore because you answer them all. Yeah, Julia? Even though you're sitting with the kids, I will allow it because I know you're not a kid. So go ahead.
Thank you, I think. The promise to Jeroboam is conditional.
Yeah. Did everybody hear that? Was everyone? Yeah, say it again, kind of more loudly.
The promise to Jeroboam is conditional. The one to David was not.
All right, did everybody catch that one? The promise to Jeroboam has one huge little word. If. He says, if you'll do what you are supposed to do, right? My whiteboard skills are not on point tonight. How's that? Is that better? Okay. All right. This is a tiny little word that carries so much weight in this passage. He says, if. Did he say if to David? No. The promises given to David, that was unconditional. There were no conditions set. He just said, I'm giving this to you. This is the way it's going to be. But he says to Jeroboam, I will do all of this for you. Verse 38, if you will listen to all that I command and walk in my ways and do what is right by keeping my statutes and my commandments as who? As my servant David. That's right, Joshua. He says, look, if you act just like David, I am ready to enact the exact same promise that's down here in Jerusalem for Rehoboam as part of Solomon's house, as part of David's house. They've already got it. He says, I will do the exact same thing for you so that both nations will be nations who are living under my covenant. If you'll do this. That's pretty cool, isn't it? That he would allow for this. And I'm verging out and take this for what it is. I have in my mind that there's this plan for this grand master plan that eventually the house here and the house here will finally come together at some point. in order to bring a Messiah that comes from both houses so that both houses can lay claim. That's kind of what the picture is supposed to be, that they won't be divided forever, that they're supposed to unite at some point, and the houses will unite and then bring about that Messiah. I kind of have in my head that that's a picture of what could have been. But was it? It was not. Because you go into 1 Kings chapter 12, and then it says, where we left off, we're going to start verse 25. Then Jeroboam built Shechem in the hill country of Ephraim and lived there. And he went out from there and built Penuel. And Jeroboam said in his heart, now the kingdom will turn back to the house of David if this people go up to offer sacrifices in the temple of the Lord at Jerusalem. And then the heart of this people will turn again to their Lord, to Rehoboam, king of Judah, and they will kill me and return to Rehoboam, king of Judah. So Jeroboam gets the kingdom. He's made king. What's the problem? What's that? Okay, yeah, but we haven't gotten there yet, that he doesn't obey God. What's the issue that he sees? What's okay? Why? Where? Yes, but fundamentally, why does he have any concern at all that these people are going to turn back to Rehoboam?
There's nowhere to worship in the north.
All right. Why is there nowhere for them to worship in the north? Who do these people serve? Yeah, Yahweh, right? Everybody, all of these people, theoretically, serve Yahweh. And where has he caused his name to dwell? In Jerusalem. And are they ever supposed to go back to Jerusalem? Why is that? All right, because that's where the temple is. They have to go there to offer sacrifices. Why else do they go back? Passover, certain feast days, right? That they are supposed to return for certain feast days, come to the temple. In other words, they may have separated, but they're constantly going to be coming back to Jerusalem because this is where the temple is. This is where worship is. This is where everything that they do, sacrifices that have to be offered, they have to take them to Jerusalem. Feast days, everything else. If they're constantly coming back to Jerusalem, what might they begin to think? They should just live there? Close? Close? What do y'all think? What's he afraid they're going to start thinking? Yeah. You know, you go back and you come in and you see the splendor, the glory of the temple. You see the buildings. You see the palace. And you begin to think, why did we leave again? Man, that was a really just rash decision, wasn't it? I mean, it couldn't have been that bad. You know what? Maybe, just maybe, things would be better if we were one nation instead of two again. You know, why did we even do that? Why did we split? Can you see the fear? That if they keep reminding themselves of the temple, reminding themselves of the palace, reminding themselves of Jerusalem, they keep leaving, they keep coming down here, eventually they're going to say, maybe this line shouldn't be here anymore. And if they do that, how many kings do they need? Just one. How many kings do they have? Two. What happens to that superfluous king? Kicked out, that's one way to put it. Yeah. What happens to him? They'll kill him. His head will be lifted up from his body, right? I mean, that's to use the language of Joseph in the baker's story, right? One too many kings, that extra king will die. So what is he to do? How does he handle this? All right. His only means of saving his neck is to keep people from having to go to Jerusalem. So, let's look at his solution here. Let's see here. Verse 28, so the king took counsel, and he made 2 calves of gold. And he said to the people, you have gone up to Jerusalem long enough. Behold your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. And he set one in Bethel, and the other he put in Dan. And this became a sin for the people went as far as Dan to be before one. He also made temples on high places, appointed priests from among all the people who were not of the Levites. And Jeroboam appointed a feast on the 15th day of the 8th month, much like the feast that was in Judah. He offered sacrifices on the altar. So he did in Bethel, sacrificing to the calves that he made, and he placed in Bethel the priests of the high places that he had made. He went up to the altar that he had made in Bethel on the 15th day in the 8th month, in the month that he had devised from his own heart. And he instituted a feast for the people of Israel, and went up to the altar to make offerings. All right, so this sounds like creative, out-of-the-box thinking that's going to save his neck, right? You know, is this something that God's going to be okay with? It's like the type of stuff we talked about this morning where you have scenarios where sometimes you just have to do something differently. Is that what we're dealing with here, Kelly?
My first thought was God didn't like it last time they made a golden calf. Like, why when they made one? So why is he going to like it when they get 2?
All right, why are you thinking of something about a golden calf?
When they messed up at Sinai. When they messed up at Sinai.
Okay, all right. Yes. Do you think you're really, though, supposed to be connecting that story with this one? Yes. Absolutely. That should have jumped off the page at you because the phrase that's used, by the way, it looks like it's different, doesn't it? Doesn't it look like it's different from Exodus chapter 32? In Exodus 32, what did he say? Behold your God that brought you up out of the land of Egypt. What does this one say? Behold your gods that brought you up out of the land of Egypt, right? Yeah, it's identical. The words are identical. The phrase is exactly the same. Nothing at all changes. It's just that the word used for God is a, Joshua, just put your hand down. I'm not taking anything right now, okay? The word that's used for God is a plural word. And so when you see the word God, it can be singular talking about God, or it can be plural talking about gods, multiple ones. So when he says, behold your gods who brought you up out of the land of Egypt, he is using the exact same phrase that Aaron used. Verbatim, nothing changes. You are supposed to just facepalm this one right here and be like, are you kidding me right now? You know, if you are, remember, Exodus chapter 32 comes in right after they've done what? Yes, excellent. That's right, Joshua. Exodus 32, they make the covenant with God. God, remember, he gives them how to build the tabernacle. And the very first story is they say, well, it looks like Moses is gone, therefore, let's do this. And they made the calf, and then with the calf, he says, behold your God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. So, as a nation, the very first thing that Israel does is they make a golden calf. Fast forward to 1 Kings, and now you have this brand new nation. And what's the very first thing that this brand new nation does? They make a golden calf. You see the parallel, right? This is supposed to be hitting you over the head. All right, Joshua, what you need? Yep, that's right. You know, he didn't just drop them, he threw them down. He broke them purposefully to demonstrate you have broken this covenant. And so a prophet is sent, which is something that we'll see here as well. Yeah? Okay, you talking about with Moses? Or with Jeroboam? Okay, that makes more sense with Jeroboam. Yes. All right, in case you didn't hear Samuel, he says this is something that he thought would get him out of trouble. Does it? No, as Samuel just said, it puts him in even more danger. You know, out of the frying pan into the fire, kind of an idea, except the fire is so much worse than what the frying pan itself is. So, yeah, you are, as Kelly very astutely points out, you are supposed to make immediate connections to Exodus chapter 32 and the violation of the golden calf. This is very, very clearly a watershed moment for this northern nation of Israel as they are now going off in the wrong direction. Behold your gods who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. By the way, what God are they worshiping? What God are they worshiping? Yahweh. You know, they're not idolatrously worshiping Baal, the Ashtoreth, Molech, Chemosh, any of the gods of any of the peoples around them. They're worshiping the God of Israel. And I think it's important that we see that. That's, very clearly, it's not necessarily a violation of the first commandment, right? You shall have no other gods in my sight is the first commandment. But what's the second one? Yeah, don't make any images to worship of things that are part of creation, right? Don't make any idols. They're violating that one, aren't they? So is the second commandment a don't make any idols of other gods? No, the second commandment is not specific to idols of other gods. You violate it if you try to worship the one true God as an idol. Did we talk about this in Exodus 32? Did we? I feel like we probably would have. It's on record. It's on YouTube. We can go back and look at it sometime and see if maybe I skipped over this important part. But that should have come out in Exodus 32. They're worshiping Yahweh, but they are worshiping Him in the way that they would worship the other gods, as a bull or a calf. All right. So where did He put these? Yes. All right. Josie just pointed out the one that's up here. Where's that? Dan. And it's probably up a little bit more up here, but that's enough to give you the idea, right? And then where's the other one? Yeah. By the way, how far is Bethel from Jerusalem? Anybody know? Okay, about 10 to 12 miles, somewhere around in that area. Who here someone uses the New American Standard. Connie, are you the one that uses the New American Standard? Sue? No. Dave? Okay. I like how the New American Standard treats this. Let's see here. Verse 28. What is it that Jeroboam tells the people?
12:28
Yes.
says, So the king consulted and made 2 golden calves, and he said to them, It is too much for you to go up to Jerusalem. Behold your gods, O Israel, that brought you up from the land of Egypt.
All right. What are the first words again? Slowly. The first words that he says to them in the quotation marks.
It is too much for you to go up to
All
Jerusalem.
right. It is too much for you to go all the way to Jerusalem, right? It is too much for you to have to travel all the way there in order to do all of your sacrifices and to do all of that. You know, we're going to make this a little bit easier for you. We're going to save you a lot of effort, a lot of time. We're going to make it more convenient for you. And in that way, maybe some of your translations have something like, the time is long past, or it's been too long, or something like that. You know, it's like, we're done with having to do that. It's too much for you to have to go those extra 10 to 12 miles in order to go to Jerusalem. Let's make this a little bit easier. We're going to put one in Bethel. We're going to put one up here in Dan. And all of the people cried out and said, this does not go with what the Word of God says. God wants us to travel to Jerusalem to worship at the temple, right? Anybody have that in your translation? What does it say about the people? Yeah, all of the people agreed, right? It says this thing became a sin, for the people went as far as Dan to be before one of these idols. And he made the temples on the high places. He appointed priests from where? From where? Connie, what were you saying? From all the people. Not just the tribe of Levi, right? So, did he appoint priests? Yeah. Is he creating a brand new system? Not really. He's using the same system, right, of having a temple, having a place that you would bring your sacrifices to, having priests. Not just that, what else does he do? What else does he create? A feast on what day? All right, the 15th day of the 8th month. Why does that sound familiar? Someone go back to Leviticus chapter 23. Leviticus chapter 23 and verse 34. Who's got that? Leviticus 23, 34. Jeff, go ahead when the mic gets to you and it's there.
Speak to the sons of Israel saying, on the 15th of this 7th month is the Feast of Booths for 7 days to the Lord.
All right. On the 15th day of the what month? Of the 7th month, you have it's called the Feast of Tents, Feast of Booths, right? Feast of Tabernacles, however you want to put it. They had this feast that they were supposed to come together, and then they would, be in their tents and act like they were still in the wilderness when God took care of them and all of that. Well, that was one of their pilgrimage festivals that they're supposed to do. And he says, guys, you don't have to do that one. I mean, we're going to have basically the same thing in the 8th month. I mean, it's similar enough, right? It has an awful lot of truth to it. It sounds really close. Why Bethel, by the way? Does Bethel carry any significance at all? What's that? Okay, just the name itself means house of God. Does it ever play any importance in Israel's story? Yes. Good job, Joshua. That's right. You had a 50-50 choice on that one, and you have chosen wisely. Well done. Yeah. Unless I'm mistaken, I think it's the first place that Abraham camps at when he comes into the land. Ryan, was that a hand up or? I couldn't tell. Must be.
Yeah, it's an answer I'm not 100% sure about, but I'm trying to remember if maybe it becomes Bethlehem? Or is that another city?
I couldn't understand you.
I'm not 100% sure of my answer.
Okay.
But I'm trying to remember if Bethel becomes Bethlehem.
No, those are two separate cities.
Okay.
No, it's a good thought though, and you have house, the Beit part of that does carry over. If you look over in Genesis chapter 35, in Genesis chapter 35, it begins, God said to Jacob, "Get up and go to Bethel and live there, and make an altar there to the God who appeared to you when you fled from your brother Esau." Is there any significance to that? What's the relationship with these people and Jacob? What's another name for Jacob? Israel. What's the connection between these people and Jacob? Yeah, they're from Israel, the nation of Israel, the descendants of Israel, the people of Israel, the nation of Israel, all of that, right? And what was the significant place for Jacob as far as the place he was told to dwell and build an altar? Was it Jerusalem? No. They didn't even have Jerusalem until David took it from the Jebusites, right? And so this was a place that has deep-rooted significance to the people that goes all the way back to a place where they can go to in Genesis itself and say, see, God told us through Israel, our forefather, through Jacob, this is where he wants us to live, and this is where he wants us to build our altar for him, right? Can you see how maybe some of this would have sounded appealing? Some of this could have made some sense to them, and they would say, maybe this is legitimate, and how the people could possibly go along with this. It sounds a lot like what they're already doing. He's not changing major things. They still have the same they still have the same priesthood like the Levitical priesthood, except it incorporates other people because, why should it only be the Levites? Everyone should get a fair share at being a priest, right? Everyone should be allowed to do this thing, so it incorporates from everyone. Brings in feasts that sound an awful lot like the feasts that were already there in place. There's an awful lot of this that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Was it okay? No. What does he say? This caused the people to what? To sin. And I think it's important that we see that. That is the basic outcome from this. Let's see here. Verse 30, this became a sin, for the people went even as far as Dan to be before one of the idols. So let's talk about the ramifications of this decision. Do we still talk about the enduring dynasty of Jeroboam? Why not? Wasn't he promised the same way David was promised? Why not? All right. This is huge. This if is vitally important. He did not stick with the conditions that were set out. And he was told, if you do this, you'll have this, but if not, things are not going to go well. His own house does not last very long. And by the way, from this point, we're not going to be going through 1 Kings and 2 Kings and talking about all the kings and all of the narratives. In fact, at this point, I'm just going to summarize things. And maybe we'll have another class at some point where we'll spend some time, because there's an awful lot of really cool stuff. And the way you can see the way they interwork, how the northern nation and the southern nation, how they work together or at odds against each other at various times, and other things that take place. You get to see the way the prophets work or don't, as the case is at some points, how God tries to use them, but they are ignored, hunted down, bad things happen to them. There's all kinds of stuff that takes place. I'm going to just synopsize some of this very, very briefly. In the northern nation of Israel, I know some of you all know this because I've heard you say it before. How many good kings? And when I say good king, you guys are all familiar with the fact that as you read through the king's accounts or the chronicles accounts, you get to a certain point when the king dies, and what does the chronicler do for you? The author, what does he do for you? Okay, so Isaac was just kind of synopsizing, are not all of the rest of the acts of this king recorded in the book of the Chronicles of the Kings? Which, by the way, the book of the Chronicles of the Kings, is that Chronicles? No, it's not. And I tell you what, that confused me big time for years upon years. I thought that Chronicles was the other one, and eventually you'll be like, oh, I want to know about the rest of the acts of that king, and you flip over there and you're like, it's the same thing. I mean, it's almost verbatim, the exact same stories. What's going on here? No, that's something that we don't have. It's no longer extant. It's been lost because it's not important to us. And those things would list what kinds of things about the king? The chroniclers. And I don't mean that to talk about 1st and 2nd Chronicles, just the history writer. Let me go that. The history writer for the king, what type of things would he record? Probably? What's that? Okay, the good stuff, but like what? What's the important stuff? Yeah, building projects that he's done, battles that he's accomplished, the great accomplishments that he's made. Is he respected? Does he bring in tribute? All of these things that are so important to the world. Was he a good, strong king? Did he get out there? One of the strongest kings in Israelite, or at least the nation of Israel. Let me ask, who do you think one of the strongest kings was? Okay, yes, Jeroboam II. He's going to be way down at the end. He has a very long tenure as king. But before him. All right, so Isaac fell into my trap. Thank you, Isaac. I appreciate that. Isaac said Ahab. That is incorrect. Ahab was not a very strong king. But in the Bible, he gets a ton of attention. as if he is vitally important to the story. Who was the strong king? No, of Israel, the nation of Israel. Who was Ahab's daddy? All right, Omri, right? Omri was a very strong, powerful king. People talk about the Omri dynasty. In fact, they even include Jehu in Omri's dynasty. Was Jehu related to Omri? No. In fact, what did Jehu do? He's the one who wiped out Omri's dynasty. But that's the way that people around Israel thought of Israel. This is Omri's kingdom because Omri was that big. He was that powerful. He was that important that people thought of Israel as kind of the way of Omri's kingdom. The way, in ancient times, people may, in Britain or whatever, may have thought of Britain as King Arthur's kingdom, even generations after the fact, right? That's the way they thought of it. How much attention does the Bible give Omri? Very little. But his son, who is kind of a weak king, he gets a whole lot of attention. Why is that? What's that? Ryan?
He was very evil.
Okay, because he was very evil. Yeah. And what is God concerned about? Does he care how politically powerful a king was? No. That means nothing to him. He sits in the heavens and he scoffs at people that care about political dealings, right? What he cares about is the spiritual evaluation and welfare of the people. And when it comes right down to it, Ahab was one of the absolute worst kings that ever lived in either Israel or Judah, and he gets the attention because of it. He was that bad. That's why it spends so much time on him, is because he led all Israel into all kinds of sinfulness and really, really made a mess of things. That's why God's more concerned about him than he is his daddy. Does that make sense? That's the way that the kings are treated. God cares about their spiritual condition and the way that they treat Israel. Now, in these ending points, and I've looked this up before, and I cannot remember, so I'm hesitant to make an absolute statement, but I'm going to make it anyway. In all of these kings in the northern nation of Israel, what was their greatest sin? Because I think this sin gets mentioned in every one of them. I think. I could be wrong. So you might come back and correct me next week or whatever. But what is their greatest sin? Yeah. Kelly?
He did not destroy the high places.
Yep. Every single one. Jeroboam gets mentioned. Their big weakness. Even Jehu. When I say Jehu, was Jehu a pretty good guy? Jehu is one of the best kings in the north as far as the spiritual evaluation. He's the one that took out Ahab and Jezebel, their family. He's the one that took out all of the worshipers of Baal and the Ashtoreth. He's the one that put them in the right direction, doing all kinds of things that were great, made some changes and reforms. But what did he not do? He never took out these high places where people went to worship God by worshiping the idols that were set up by Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, in which he caused all Israel to sin. Sometimes we talk about how one person really can't make that big of a difference. Y'all ever heard people say that? Like, come on, just one person. You may think that you can make a big difference, but, down the years, as you get years or whatever the case is, you may not make that much of a difference in the grand scheme of things, right? And that's fair. I firmly believe that unless you're Jeroboam. Because Jeroboam is mentioned again and again and again as the one who caused all of Israel to sin. in such a way they never recovered until who finally took them out? Until the Assyrians, in what year? All right, in 722 BC. And we'll talk about some of that in kind of a little history lesson later, although probably not a whole lot on the Assyrians, more with the Assyrians and Babylonians and their dealings. All right. Questions then on Jeroboam and the influence that he has on the northern nation of Israel. Isaac? Okay, we're not on Judah. Okay, very good. We'll talk about Judah. We'll pick up Judah next week. Remind me of your question. All right, what do you have?
When the Assyrians took them out, did they fight until no man was left?
Well, not necessarily. They just came in and really rampaged them, is what took place. It was not a valiant fight. It wasn't to the last man, and we're going to hold strong. The Assyrians just came in and brutally did whatever they wanted to and wiped them out, basically took everyone else off somewhere else. And like I said, we'll talk more about this when we get to talking about Hezekiah. And we'll talk about Judah next week, and I'm sure we'll talk about Hezekiah next week. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. Good class. We'll turn it over to Richard.